So, when we talk about Donald Trump, it's impossible not to talk about his communication style. It didn't just bend the rules of politics. It felt like it rewrote the entire playbook. But was it all a calculated strategy, or was it something else? In this explainer, we're going to unpack some of the controversial claims, look at the psychology behind why repetition is so powerful, and explore the impact his words have had.
Okay, let's just jump right in with a really powerful example. So after a U.S. operation targeting Iran's nuclear facilities, President Trump made a very strong declaration. He said the program had been completely obliterated. I mean, that's about as definitive a statement as you can make. But did the intelligence reports actually say the same thing?
And right here is where things get interesting. You have the president claiming total, permanent destruction, wiped out forever. But then a leaked assessment from the Defense Intelligence Agency painted a different picture. It confirmed that, yes, damage was done, but the facilities weren't gone for good. And that gap, that space between the public statement and the intelligence, kicked off a huge debate about political messaging and where the line is between exaggeration and fact.
Now, the thing is, this wasn't just a one-off incident. Not even close. It was actually part of a much wider pattern, one you can trace back for decades.
Yeah, this pattern of controversial statements didn't just pop up with the presidency. You can go all the way back to the 1980s when people were questioning claims about his personal wealth. Then you move into the 2010s with the whole birther movement. And of course, it really intensified during his time in office, culminating in the claims of widespread fraud after the 2020 election.
And if you're trying to wrap your head around the sheer scale of it all, well, fact-checking organizations basically had to dedicate whole teams to tracking his statements. The Washington Post's fact-checker database, for example, documented more than 20,000 misleading or false claims just during his 4 years in office. It's a pretty staggering number that really highlights the frequency of it all.
But things really kicked into high gear after the 2020 election. Joe Biden was declared the winner, and immediately Trump and his team began claiming widespread fraud. They filed something like 60 lawsuits to challenge the results. But, these challenges were almost all dismissed by the courts, and that includes by judges that Trump himself had put on the bench. And they all said pretty much the same thing. There just wasn't enough evidence.
So you see all this, and the big question becomes, what was the point? Was this a thought-out, calculated strategy? Or was it just disinformation? And trying to answer that question leads you down two very different paths.
And this is where people are really split. It's like two totally different ways of seeing the exact same thing. For supporters, they often see a clear strategy, a way to talk directly to people who felt ignored by the traditional media, a way to challenge that establishment and totally dominate the conversation. But for critics, they see a style that just blurred the line between what's real and what's not, and in doing so, really damaged public trust in core institutions like the press and our election process.
All this brings up a fascinating question.